Self-voicing enabled. Somehow, this seemingly innocuous patch of trees is even more ominous during the day. Bevan. Artie. Bev whispers loudly into the trees, holding Cameron's paw as they descend into the ditch and over onto the forest side. They only take a few steps into the trees before Artie calls back. Archero. Yo. Just tacking a whiz. Figured you guys wouldn't want me starring. Bevan. Dude, shut up. Bev continues to shout whisper. Archero. What's up?
今回からボイスを使っています。eSpeak NG を使っています。
Bevan can see movement from Artie now, some of the bushes about 10 feet ahead of them shifting. Bevan. This is where that shotgun hick yelled at us. Archero. Oh, well, I'm almost done anyway. Bev sighs, then notices Cameron with his ears low, looking anxious. Bevan. You alright, baby? Cameron. Do you hear like radio static? It's really loud. Bev listens, but only hears some wind through the trees. Bevan. I think it's just the leaves, honey. But then there is something, maybe what could be described as static. Bevan. Actually. Bevan. Jesus. He jumps as his phone's notification sound goes off. Bevan. Well, I definitely heard that. I do think it's just the wind, but I'm hearing it too. He takes his phone out, seeing that an email managed to get through. Cottage Inn reservations. Important booking information. Due to the ongoing public health emergency, all reservations have been cancelled. We sincerely apologize. The notification banner cuts off there, and the surreal message makes Bevan feel like they're isolated from the world now more than ever. He wonders if he should try to call the police, even though he still only has one bar. At this point, he'd be willing to just let the authorities know that they are stranded before anything else can happen. Then something out of the corner of his eye catches his attention. It looks like the wall of a structure of some kind, beige and peeling, hard to see through all the leaves and branches. Bevan holds up his paw in front of Cameron, signaling for him to stay put before taking a few cautious steps further into the forest. He thinks it's a trailer, one that looks so run down that he wouldn't be surprised if it's abandoned. What unsettles him is that it's buried so deep behind the trees, it's like it's meant to be hidden. He can try to make a call further down the road, away from whatever that is. Archero. I'm here. No need to check on me. Bevan. Okay, let's go. I'm gonna try to make a call on the road, but we're going straight. The look on Artie's face makes the bear pause. Bevan. What? Archero. What the fuck? His voice is quiet, but his tone is one of confusion and shock, staring over Bev's shoulder. Bevan feels dread creep over him, not sure how something else could be happening right now, something so terrible that Artie has that look. Cameron stands where he left him. Oddly enough, he doesn't even seem to be paying attention to them. He's staring up, towards the trees, and Bevan can see his eyes darting from left to right. His ears are lying back and twitching, like he's hearing something that's too loud. His breathing is heavy, and Bevan can see his chest heaving. He's panicking again, but the reason for it is clear. About a single second is all Bev has to see it and to hear it. And then it drops onto Cameron. Cameron is suffocating. Just moments ago, he'd been gasping for breath, feeling the invisible dread creep up his back, the deafening static growing in his ears, but now it's completely black, and something has its limbs around him, fingers over his mouth and nostrils. He thrashes around, or at least he tries to. He goes through the motions, but there's no sensation of movement. A straining inhale of air drones right next to his ear, the thing pressing its head to the side of his face. Cameron begs it to let go, tries to call for help. Bevan was in front of him only seconds ago, or minutes. The voice in his head returns, or hours. Or has it been years? It doesn't matter when you're dead. Cameron does think that he's died, and that he's in hell, because of course he'd end up there. There is no hell. This is death. This is what happens to everyone, Cameron. Cameron realizes then that it's not the thing holding on to him that's speaking to him, because now is when it starts to speak, but it's not a voice he expects. No exclamation, get away.
Get away.
A woman's voice. Stupid fucking cunt exclamation, cheating whore.
Cunt.
A man's voice, a sickening thud. The tone of the static changes, and Cameron knows he's listening to something different, a different moment. He said you can stop no. nor he's still twitching. And it continues. What sounds like someone screaming through a gag.
この中央に出るフォントが違うやつも読んでくれる。嬉しい。
A woman sobbing, a man begging, but then there's a shift, and though most of the voices were women, they become almost exclusively young men. If you let me go, even tell anyone. I swear to God. No mate sport.
死者の声なのかな。
Stop! Exclamation! Stop! Exclamation! Just stop!
エクスクラメー
And
シ
the
ョン
voices blend
読まな
together
くていい。
and go on and on and on. Meanwhile, Cameron goes limp, giving up, feeling as one with the voice that comes next. Why don't you just kill me? Bevan watches as Cameron's body just goes limp, and though he tries to leap forward and catch him, the coyote slips to the ground at his feet. The bear instantly picks him up, or tries to, though it's something he's done many times. Prefs, though it's some options. Mute, deactivate. Sound volume, deactivate. Music vol, options. Though it's something he'd done many times before, he'd never done it while Cameron was so completely lifeless, and he struggles with the coyote's dead weight. Bevan. Cameron. He lays the coyote out on his back, hoping he just wakes up. Archero. What the fuck was that? Dude, what the hell was that thing? Whatever it was just seemed to absorb into Cameron, disappearing in an instant. Bevan doesn't care. 2 days ago, he would have thought he'd give almost anything to see something like that.
あ、これはキャメロンだけじゃなくて、この3人全員見たんだ。
Now, it doesn't seem to matter at all.
この叫び声。
Cameron's chest that had been heaving seconds ago isn't moving at all now.
キャメロンがやばい。
Bevan. Fuck. Artie. He's not breathing, man. What do we do, Archero? Holy shit, maybe chest compressions, right?
なんだっけ。心肺蘇生
The
術。
panic is threatening to overwhelm the bear, his peripheral vision dimming, going dark, and he has to rest a paw next to Cameron's head to steady himself. He can't pass out now, otherwise Cameron would only have Artie to help him, and the cat is seemingly frozen, his fingers twisting into his head fur. Archero. Why is this even happening? Why would he just stop breathing?
呼吸も止まっちゃ
Bevan
ってる
tries
ん
to
だ。
tilt Cameron's head back, straighten his torso so he can breathe. Bevan. Come on. Breathe, Cam, just breathe, please. Bevan rubs at Cameron's chest. It's such a desperate, useless gesture. Bevan, do you know how to do CPR?
CPR ってなんだ？よく、駅とかにあるやつ。なんて言うんだっけ？
Archero. No.
日本では CPR じゃなかった気がしたな。
Bev readies himself, wishing he could remember a single useful thing from the one day he learned about CPR in high school. All he remembers is tittering with his classmates about the female mannequin's chest and how they have to touch it. His vision blurs as he uselessly places his paws, one over the other on Cameron's chest.
アメリカの人は心臓病が多いから、車の中にさ、積んでたりするんだよね。CPR。
And then a droning, ragged wheeze comes from the coyote's mouth. Bevan. Oh my god.
CPR ってあれか。道具じゃなくて、蘇生術のことを指してるのかな？
Another labored wheeze. Archero. He's breathing, right, Bevan?
入ってきた？
That's right, Cam. Keep going, baby. He is, but it's still strained, like something heavy is on his chest. Not sure of what else to do, Bevan pulls Cameron into a sitting position, leaning the coyote against his body, and Cameron gasps.
上げて、空気の通り道をさ、確保して、で、胸を、肋骨、みぞおちのあたりを押しまくってさ、
Bevan. Oh,
あと呼びかけるんだよ
God.
ね。
Just keep breathing like that, honey.
死んだ？
Yes. Even Artie is crying, wiping his eyes as he laughs. Archero. But what just attacked him? You saw that thing, right? Or am I crazy? Bevan shakes his head. Bevan. I don't know what it was. I don't know. Now Bevan just needs Cameron to regain consciousness, so he knows he's okay for sure. Never had he seen evidence of, or believed that the supernatural could physically harm the living. Archero. Let's get out of this forest, dude. In case it comes back, Bevan. Yeah, alright. He's very careful with how he moves Cameron, terrified that his breathing might stop again. But as he stands, cradling Cameron in his arms, he looks up.
あ、楽だ。最初からこの eSpeak を入れておけばよかった。
Standing 20 feet away, toward that trailer, is another bear. He's holding a shotgun.
ショット
Devon
ガン。
stares, feeling himself become oddly detached from the situation. His mind is still overwhelmed with what just happened to Cameron. That's what he wants to focus on, but the shotgun has his attention now, and for just a moment, Devon thinks about just running. If he applies logic to this situation, he assumes the other bear won't shoot, but something in his eyes, something is off. So, Devon says what he hopes will make clear to this other bear that they are not a threat. Devon, we need help. We're stranded, and our friend is unconscious. The old-looking bear focuses on him for
さ
several
っきのや
seconds.
つ
Devon hears the rustling of dead leaves and foliage next to him as Archero moves. Suddenly, the bear swings the shotgun around to point to Devon's right.
あ、さっきはでもクマじゃなかったね。ピストル撃ってきたのは。
Don't you move, boy.
ショットガンでもなかったし。
Archero. Hey.
Hey,
I'm
hey,
sorry,
hey.
don't shoot. Archero sounds terrified, his voice strained and high-pitched. The old bear stares at Artie for several seconds before pointing the shotgun down toward the ground, but only slightly. The bear gestures at the coyote. You doing something to him, Devon? What? Doing something? No, we're trying to help him, Devon. Something attacked him. We need to get him help. The older bear grimaces. What do you mean, something? Dev hesitates, at least until the gun is shifted in his direction. Devon. No, wait, I'm not waiting. You show up on my property making all kinds of sounds, and you're standing there with a knocked out yote. Archero. Hey, we didn't do anything to him. We're trying to help. The bear growls. I don't care if you're trying to help him or
8M ない
trying
んだ
to
ね。
fuck him. I wanna know the truth, not that something happened. The standoff continues for a few more seconds before Dev jumps in again. Devon. It was something dark, like a shadow. I called it something because I didn't get a chance to see it, but it jumped on him and disappeared. Devon realizes what he's saying as he says it, and half expects to be shot for saying something so stupid. Devon. I swear to God, that's what happened. The old bear's eyes flick to Artie, and the cat quickly throws his support behind the ridiculous statement. Archero. Yeah, that is what happened. I don't know what the fuck it was, but it was there. It was dark and had red eyes or some shit. I don't even think we should be out here right now. Devon, once again, wants to tell Artie to shut up, that saying more is only going to make this situation worse. But instead of getting angry again, an odd expression comes over the other bear's face, one that Devon can't quite decipher. Then he finally speaks, casually bringing the shotgun up to rest over a shoulder. And it jumped on him, that yote there, Devon. Yeah. Alrighty, so I'm guessing y'all are on some drugs, or some shit, Devon. No.
うん
Using out in the
地
heat
元の
ain't
人
ever a smart idea.
は、そういう心霊現象に悩まされてないんかな。
Devon. We weren't. Devon trails off, realizing this doesn't matter at all right now. Devon. We need to get him help. He's not waking up.
あんまり呼吸止まったままだと脳細胞死んじゃうから。
Devon kneels, resting Cameron on the ground as he half
早く
props
蘇
him
生
up,
しないとね。
needing to rest his tiring arms.
障害が残っちゃう。
There's a pause, in which this other bear just stares down at them, a pause that's long enough that Dev opens his mouth to speak again, but that's finally when the older bear seems to break out of his trance.
お、これか。地元
Shit,
住
of
民。
course. Sorry about the gun and
ほぼ
all.
クマだね。
It's just that I always get a bunch of coots on my property every now and then. Devon looks up at the suddenly friendly bear.
フレンドリーかこ
In
れ。
the back of his mind he thinks he can almost hear sirens. Very familiar sirens. Shit's not even loaded. The bear grunts as he brings the shotgun forward, pointing it back
こけ脅
towards
しだ
the
ったん
ground
だ
before
ね。
it seems to break in half as the stock suddenly
っていう
drops
かさ、
down.
ショットガンよりこのクマ自体の方が攻撃力強そうですけどね。クマの一撃の方が。
The bear turns
ショッ
to
トガンい
show
らない
them
で
that
しょ。
the barrels are empty.
バレルズはエンプティ。
That actually does make Devon feel a bit better, even if the gun had been pointed at them just minutes ago. The bear then closes it
ク
with
マ
a
の種
snap.
類が違うのかな。
So, I think your best bet is to call the proper authorities so they can get some help out here, Devon. Do you know how we can do that? There's no service here. Course there ain't. But there is service just outside of town, to the east. Works whenever I go out there to make a call. Dev's heart leaps in his chest at the idea that there might actually be a quick way out of this situation. He looks in an eastward direction, ready to set off immediately. Hold on, it's a little ways out there, and it's a pretty specific spot. I can give you a quick ride. No more than 5 minutes. The old bear turns away and starts making his way toward the trailer. Artie glances at him, clearly uneasy about all of this. Dev is hesitant himself, because of course he would be. Anyone would be. But after everything they've been through, Devon looks down at Cameron, the coyote still breathing steadily, now looking almost peaceful. Still, fear grips the bear's chest. The fact that Cameron still isn't waking up is slowly increasing his worry to the point of panic again. So, he sets his jaw and follows the old bear. He half expects Artie not to follow, but he does, and the four of them disappear further into the trees.
ついてった。
Cameron's agony had seemed as if it might last forever, the feeling of suffocation going on and on.
キャメロンの意識はあるんだ。
But after an immeasurable amount of time, the fingers over his mouth and nostrils had dissolved into the blackness. So did the voices, diminished into indistinguishable whispers. Now his breaths come slow and steady, but he has to focus on them, to consciously inhale and exhale so that it won't stop. While the experience is terrifying, the laborious nature of it almost ensures that he won't hyperventilate. After a time, the terror fades into a dull, hollow desperation accompanied by spurts of panic each time he remembers he's somewhere he doesn't understand and that he can't seem to escape it.
もうちょっと自然な声にしたいんだけど、ただ eSpeak 以外使えないんだよな。
Then, gradually, even that dissolves, and like a dream within a dream, it fades away.
起きたのかな？目が覚めた。
Cameron's vision is blurry at first, and it stays that way as his eyes remain mostly closed, unfocused. Fear hitches in his chest again before he realizes that he's been breathing normally without the need to focus on it. That's when he notices that what he can see is a bit odd. It looks kinda like...
自分自身
like himself.
幽体離脱しちゃったのかな。
Cameron stares, still feeling groggy, and
水
out
曜
of
日
it,
のダウンタウン
trying to
で
make
さ、
sense
こう
of
いう
what
企
he's
画あったよ
seeing.
ね。クロちゃんが幽体離脱ドッキリみたいな。最後ゲボ入ってたけどね。大抵ゲボ入って終わるんだよね。
It's him, his reflection, but it's hard to
本当に
understand
ゲボ
why
を
that's the case
見れるの
because it
は
feels like he's lying
水曜日
down.
のダウンタウンだけだね。貴重だよ。ありがたい。
At first, the coyote wonders if maybe this is the floor mirror in their bathroom and that he'd passed out. Still, the angle is wrong, and that just leaves Cameron feeling more confused. The coyote closes his eyes again, trying to remember what happened last. He also begins to wonder why he's lying on something soft instead of the cold tile of the bathroom. Nothing makes sense, so he does the only thing he can think to do at this moment. Cameron. Dev. He hears something shift around next to him. Cameron tries to clear his throat, but it's bone dry, so he swallows instead. Cameron. Dev. Shit.
これはさっき
Something
の
is pressed to his lips
クマ
and
のさ、
sensing that
家で
it's
しょ。
water, Cameron drinks,
ショッ
getting
トガン
several
ベア
swallows
の
before it's pulled away. Cameron then looks around, getting a full view of his surroundings. The voice hadn't sounded like Dev's, but Cameron can't imagine who else it could be, and a large, furry, brown shape moves into view. Cameron stares, at first wondering what could have possibly happened to Dev.
下入ってんのかな。
Save. Cameron stares, at first.
あ、入ってたわ。
Cameron stares, but then he realizes what a stupid thought that is. This is a different bear altogether. He also realizes that something is definitely wrong, that either he's still dreaming, or that he's in a situation he can't even begin to understand. He quickly sits up, and the old bear raises up a paw. Hey, it's alright, kid. I'm here to help ya. The voice is higher pitched than he would have expected from such a large creature, and the coyote feels like he's heard it before, but he can't place it, not right now, at least. I'm Brian. What about you? Cameron. Cameron responds automatically, even though a smaller voice in the back of his head tells him this isn't right. None of this is right, Brian. Well, hi there, Cameron. You're probably wondering where the hell you are, huh? While the bear's demeanor is friendly enough, his appearance definitely isn't. Again, Cameron desperately tries to remember exactly what happened last, and where exactly he might be.
細長いからさ、奥に。トレーラーハウスみたいな。 気がしたけど。
He nods anyway, instinctively trying to keep up the facade that he's fine and
Facade
that he
って言うんだ。
doesn't suspect that everything is wrong. Brian. Well, it's a funny story, but I heard some shouting outside, and when I went out there, I found you and your friends. You were unconscious, of course.
森に住んでんだね。
Cameron. Bev. Was he a
CW
bear?
ニコルみたいな。
Cameron looks around hopefully, as if Bev might be there with them. It's only then that he realizes they're in a trailer, and fragments of what happened recently start to come back to him. It leaves him feeling all the more uneasy. Brian. Yeah, a bear like myself, and there was a cat, too.
猫もいるんだ。
Cameron. Artie.
アーティ。
The memories of the past day and a half come back to the coyote slowly, and with it comes a feeling of anxiety and dread. Either he's in trouble, or he was in trouble, and somehow this bear is here trying to help him. Brian. Well, I didn't get his name. He ran off just as I was getting there. Cameron. Where's Bev? The bear, I mean. Is he here, Brian? Yeah, about that. The bear shifts around on the bed he's sitting on, making the springs squeak. Brian. What happened is after the cat ran off and you were unconscious, your bear friend, Devon, right? He decided to make a run for the highway to get you help. Cameron stays quiet as he tries to absorb that the bear's sentences make sense, technically, but at the same time it's confusing. Why would Devon leave him here alone with this bear? Now Cameron remembers that they were on a trip of some kind, a trip to Echo, the voice, the trailer. Cameron starts looking around again, trying to spot a shotgun, because now he's starting to realize who this might be. Cameron. I don't. He comes up short, at a complete loss. What he wants to say is that he wants to see Dev, but if what the bear said is true, there's not much he can do. Cameron. Does Devon know I'm here, Brian? Course he does. Seemed real worried about you. Said he would have had the cat get help, but we're not even sure where he ran off to. Cameron. Why'd he run, Brian? Well, Brian pauses, seeming to think back, and also seeming hesitant to say something.
なんで食べちゃったのかな。
Cameron tenses up,
お腹の
the
中に
feeling
入
of
ってんじゃん。
wrongness returning.
くれてるもんね。
Brian. It's kinda hard to explain, but something spooked him. Recalling the events of the past few days seems to gain momentum, and now he can vaguely remember what happened just before he ended up here. He was standing in the forest, ears down, hearing that awful static, but what exactly happened after that is still a bit foggy. Cameron. What was it, Brian? Well, this might sound a bit crazy, but I've lived here a good while, and sometimes there's this thing in the trees that comes after me. Thing? What an odd thing to say. But then he remembers something strange right before he lost consciousness. A dark shadow dropping on top of him before he disappeared into another world, locked in that terrible embrace. Cameron. A shadow. Although he says it softly, the bear clearly hears him. Cameron swallows hard, still feeling like this situation is very off, even when considering the circumstances. But Brian smiles in a way that's almost sympathetic. Brian. Did it happen to sound like static, white noise? Cameron looks at the bear carefully before he nods. Brian. Yep, I've seen it myself. Some of us can just see things that others can't. Cameron swallows loudly. Cameron. You see things, too, Brian. Yeah, always could. Don't know why. Through all the confusion and terror, and of all people, this bear seems to understand exactly what Cameron is going through. He feels a sudden sense of kinship with the bear. Then Cameron remembers his phone, quickly pulling it out and holding down the power button. The screen flickers on for just a moment before multiple lines of black appear on the screen, which widen steadily before the entire display goes black.
今まで何千万何億人っていう人間がさ死んでるわけだからさ、強い無念とか怨念を持って死んでった人がさ、もう何億人といるわけでしょ。そういう人たちがお化けになってたら、もう世界中がもうお化けで埋め尽くされちゃうてるはずだから、もうもう見えるっていうより、もう満員電車みたいな状態になっちゃうよね、きっと。お化けが見えるとしたら。そういう意味で考えるとお化けはいないんだろうな。物理的にね。もう入りきんないから、地球上に。だって原始人とかさ、アウロステなんとかピクスみたいな。クロマニオン人とかも含めたらさ、相当な数だよ。 どれぐらいのさ、知能指数からお化けになれるんだろうね。原始人はお化けになれないのかな、知能が低いと。知能っていうか感情がね、強い感情を持ってないとお化けにはなれないでしょうから。あと宗教を持ってないとダメなのかな。まあある程度条件があるのかもね。そう考えると。条件を満たさないとお化けにはなれないっていうんであれば、いっぱいはいないかもしれないね。厳しい道のりなんだな、お化けになるのは。強い怨念があるとか、宗教を持っているとか、誰かに殺された場合だとか、そういうのがあるのかもね。でも殺された人なんてめちゃくちゃいるでしょ。中世、ヨーロッパとか、日本もそうだけど、戦国時代とかね。殺人数とんでもないでしょうからね。それで言ったらもう現代日本なんて、もう年に数十回ぐらいでしょ、殺人なんて。だから現代の方がお化けになる人率は少ないのかもね。どっちかっていうと戦国時代とか合戦で何十万も死ぬわけでしょ、殺人で。そう考えるとあんまり現代人の幽霊っていうのはレアで、本当ならもっと戦国とかね、そういう時代の言葉も通じないようなそういう人たちが現れてないとおかしいよね。ただそういうのは真面目に考えちゃいけないんでしょうね。まああるいはね、こっちの見る側の方の脳みそのチャンネルがお化けのチャンネルと合ってないといけないのかもしれない。同時代のお化け、あるいは自分が理解できる範囲の時代のお化けとしかこう波長が合わないようになってて、でフィルターがかかってて見えるお化けのねタイプとか、そういうのがタイプとか、どういう死に方したとか、どういう言葉喋んのかとか、その見える側の方でフィルターかかってるから、あるいお化けがうじゃうじゃ現れないようになってるのかもしれないですよね。選別されてるのかもしれないと考えると筋は通ってるかな。
Cameron is confused, then remembers the fall into the lake, and he even sees some moisture still under the screen. Cameron. Shit. Brian grunts. Brian. Your phone busted. Shame. No service out here, anyway.
ああ、やっぱ電波届かないんだ。すごいね。こ
Cameron.
の人。
How
イン
long
ターネ
ago
ット
did
な
he
い生
leave?
活で暮らしてんの。
Brian. HM. About 2-3 hours ago. He'd been unconscious that long. Still, the
電
anxiety
話
is
もイ
telling
ンターネ
Cameron
ット
to
もないの
move,
かな。
to go.
電話もインターネットもない生活してたらさ、どうなっちゃうんだろうね。
Cameron. I think I should go after him. Thanks for your help, though.
まあ逆に自然の中で生活してない人間の方がどうなっちゃうんだろうねって思わなきゃいけないんでしょうね。
Cameron suddenly stands, but a wave of dizziness comes over him. Cameron. Oh fuck. The coyote catches himself against the wall, feeling weak and confused. Brian. Whoa there, kid. I don't think you're in the best condition to go out there. You might pass out again, and that bear seemed real intent on me keeping you safe. Cameron has to lean against the wall slightly, catching his breath. He didn't realize that he's still messed up. It would make sense, since he'd been out for so long. It's just odd that it seems to be getting worse. Whatever that creature did to him, it feels serious. As if reading his thoughts, the bear brings up the entity, Brian. Besides, I don't think you should go out there while that shadow creature is still hanging around. Been seeing it through the window a few times. Don't wanna scare you, but I think it wants you. Cameron glances up at the window nearest to them. Instead of the shadow, he's surprised to see Raincoat Monster just beyond the trees, partially hidden in a strange, Crouching position. Stranger still are the odd shivering, twitching motions the creature is making. Though its face is mostly hidden, Cameron can tell he's being looked at. Even after everything he's been through, the coyote finds himself lowering his gaze quickly. Once again, just like when he was 8 years old, he's afraid of this hallucination. Or rather, he's afraid of this imitation of the hallucination, and considering that it's moving so violently, that's what this is. Brian. You see it? Cameron. No, I mean, it's something else, Brian. Oh, what is it? Sometimes I see other really disturbing stuff in those woods. Well, most place in this town, actually, Cameron. It's something more personal. Cameron is caught between wanting to stay cautious of this man, but also wanting to confide in him. After the trauma of the past 2 days combined with feeling almost abandoned by his boyfriend, the coyote is desperate for some kind of connection. Cameron. What kind of things do you see? Brian looks hesitant. Brian. Hey, don't wanna freak you out more than you already are. Cameron. I'm okay. I'm just wondering if maybe we see similar things. Cameron smiles at him, and that seems to throw the bear off for some reason. Brian. Well, then he seems to snap out of it. Brian. To be honest, I see people getting killed, usually. Not sure if it's real, like from the past, or if it ain't. Sometimes, it just feels like something being made up. Cameron can understand that feeling. Cameron. Yeah, another wave of weakness and exhaustion. Cameron. Sorry, I'm still really tired. Cameron slides down the wall to sit again, still feeling out of it, but at least he feels somewhat comfortable with this bear now. Brian. Makes sense, after what you went through. You want my bed, Cameron? I'm good. Just need to catch my breath. He's not quite that comfortable with him. Cameron. This is gonna sound weird, too, but I see a ton of stuff in this town, and sometimes it feels made up. Like, I saw a UFO, like an alien spaceship above a body today. Brian stares at Cameron. Brian. I see. Just as he was beginning to feel comfortable, the coyote feels himself back on edge. Did he say something wrong, Cameron? I mean, I don't know if it was a UFO, but it looked. Brian. You're fine, kid. It's just that I haven't known anyone else that's seen something that I've seen, too. It was on that dirt road, right? Circular shape with a bunch of red lights on it. Cameron perks up.
Okay. いや、この eSpeak NG いいですね。eSpeak バニラバージョンの eSpeak よりもやっぱね、ナチュラルにはなってはいるんだよね。
There's little question in his mind now that this bear is definitely like him. Cameron. Yeah, in like, Cameron. Shit, when did that space shuttle explode? Like, the mid-80s, I think. This time, Brian lets out a little laugh of surprise, and maybe a little disbelief as well. Brian. 86, to be exact. Damn, that's crazy. I've met a few people like you, but you're on a whole new level, kid. Cameron stares back, briefly wondering if he's still dreaming all of this. It's almost too jarring trying to understand how he ended up here with this bear, but if it is a dream, it's not the worst one. Cameron. Can you help me find Devon? Maybe you could take me up the road to the highway and we could catch up to him. The bear leans back, scratching his head. Brian. I don't know about that, kid. He took off at a good pace, and I'll bet he's probably already reached the highway by now. Probably in the process of alerting the authorities. Cameron twists the hem of his shirt in his paws, feeling a sickening, growing knot of worry in the pit of his stomach. He just wants to go, to run and find Dev and escape the town with him, but the threat of what's out there is very real, and Cameron does not want to repeat what happened out there in the forest. And apparently Dev already escaped without him. It makes sense why he had to leave him behind, but that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. Only now are the memories of what happened during his blackout returning, and only now does he remember how it felt like being in hell. Cameron. Can that shadow creature get in here? Brian. No, it seems to avoid the trailer. Dunno why. You okay? Cameron rubs his eyes with both paws. Cameron. I don't know. His increasingly heavy breath prompts Brian to crouch in front of him, patting his shoulder roughly. Brian. Hey, you're fine. I'll make you something, okay? How does some tea sound? That always calms me down. The pats jolt the coyote back to wakefulness, and he nods, if only to get the bear to focus on something other than him. Cameron. Okay, Brian. Great, I'll get started on it, then. Just relax for now.
親切だ、このクマ。
The wind whips violently in Devon's face. It's powerful enough that he can barely breathe. The ominous sound of the sirens were really the only thing that guaranteed he'd be home as soon as he possibly could be.
クマのパートに
He always took their warning seriously, because what they warned of always terrified him. So now, in this haze of pain and horror, he wonders why he didn't heed the warnings. The mile-wide tornadoes that rip across the plains of his home state evoke a primal fear in him that few other things do. He'd felt that fear moments before his world became a red flash of pain, before he saw Artie crumple lifeless to the ground at the same time a pop echoed through the air, before he was made to drink from the plastic bottle of water the other bear had brought out of his trailer, and before his paws were tightly bound above his head. As Devon briefly comes to in the red glow of this metal container he's in, to the sound of metal chains and the feeling of cramped heat, he knows he should be doing something. He should be helping someone he deeply cares about. Lupita, Artie, Cameron, Devon, Cameron.
ね。
His voice is rough, dry, on the verge of breaking. His chest feels as if it's being crushed. Devon sinks back into the darkness, even while his mind roils in terror. Even as the F5 tornado continues to barrel right
ト
towards
ルネー
him.
ドのなんか階級があるのかな ?F5。F5 強いのかなトルネード起きてんの
Cameron sits at the table as the bear busies himself near the stovetop with his back to the coyote. Again, the coyote contemplates leaving, either by asking Brian again, or just walking out the door. Another glance toward the window confirms Raincoat Monster is still out there, this time standing high in the trees, perched on a branch, still watching. Cameron quickly looks away again. He feels deep down that, if he leaves, another terrible thing is going to happen. While he believes the bear's story about what happened, something about this trailer is extremely uncomfortable, making him even more anxious. He thinks that must have something to do with his upbringing, the long, narrow space feeling familiar in the worst of ways. It's like suddenly falling ill, and being reminded of all the awful feelings one has when they're especially sick. Meanwhile, Brian is chattering on about how chamomile is particularly effective when it comes to anxiety, and Cameron vaguely wonders why he's moving around so much, if he's just making tea. Mostly, though, Cameron is trying to think clearly, get his thoughts to line up correctly through the fog he still feels clouding his brain. It's making him extremely tired, and a couple of times the coyote is convinced that he's still dreaming. It's almost like he's high again, but without any of the positives of being high. His anxiety is already calming down, though, despite the worry that whatever was in the forest might have done some kind of damage. Auto forward. His anxiety is already calming down, though, despite the worry that whatever was in the forest might have done some kind of damage to his brain. He focuses his thoughts on Devon, trying to think clearly.
ちょっと
Would
音
the
遅
bear
い
really
な
leave him alone like this? He could have at least left him a message, to let him know that this is what he wanted, that Cameron is safe in this situation. But Cameron also knows that wouldn't have been all that practical. If Devon was really in a hurry, which he definitely would have been, he would have left him behind, if he knew it was for the best, and if he knew the situation was safe. There isn't really a way he could have left a message anyway except for maybe a text, but with no phone and no service. If this Brian guy really wants to help them though, he should have gone to the highway instead. He has to have a car, right? It's not like he can just survive out here in an old trailer. Cameron fixes his face into a pleasant smile, knowing that it seemed to set the old bear at ease whenever he did. Cameron, do you have a car? Brian, seemingly absorbed in what he's doing, glances back. Brian, well, I kinda share a truck with another guy in town. He happens to be out of town with that truck right now. Of course he would be, right, Cameron? Oh, okay. Brian smiles at him again. Brian, I can see why Daniel likes you. You're a friendly kid, Cameron. Oh, you mean Devon? Brian. Shit, yeah. The brain doesn't remember things like it used to, Cameron. You're fine. Cameron stares at the table, feeling like that exchange was very strange, but it's hard to think through the cloudiness. Despite the dull anxiety, the feeling is worrying him more and more. Cameron. I'm actually feeling really weird. I'm so tired, Brian. Well, considering what happened to you, that makes sense. Not to pry, but do you do any drugs, Cameron? No, not anymore at least. I mean, I had some weed like hours ago, but that should have worn off by now. Brian shrugs. Brian, People always say weed ain't a big deal, but it's probably what fucked me up the most back when I first tried it. Cameron listens to the sound of liquid being poured into a cup. Cameron. Yeah, I don't think I like it. Cameron. But I shouldn't still be high, right?
カフェインはあんま取らない方がいい。
Brian. You shouldn't, but after my first time smoking, I felt high for fucking years after, even when I wasn't touching the stuff. Cameron feels a prickle of worry underneath the haze. Cameron. Years, Brian. Yep. It's, what's it called? Depersonalization. Made me feel like my own pores weren't my own, and everything looked all weird and distorted, like a filter
理
was in
人
front
症
of
みたい
my
なこ
eyes.
とかな。
Cameron vaguely recalls some of his own friends describing the exact same thing, even when their trip was supposed to be over. He'd experienced it himself while he was under the influence of various dissociative. Having the same experience while he's supposed to be sober is borderline terrifying, though. Cameron. Weed does that. His worry and panic breaks through the surface for a second, and he feels like, for that moment, he's surfaced from the muddy depths of his confusion before slipping back under. He can't live in a dream for the rest of his life. But what even is his life, sitting here in a trailer with an old, slightly smelly bear?
ライトリースメリー。失礼すぎる。
Brian. Well, it went away once I stopped thinking about it. How did he even get here again? Where's Dev? Cameron. Oh shit. Cameron suddenly grips the table, paws shaking as he feels as if he's lifting out from his body somehow, and that he has to hold on to something to remain in place. Brian. You're alright, kid. Here, Brian ambles over to his fridge, opens the freezer, pulls out the ice tray, and drops a few cubes into the mug, the ice clinking loudly. He stirs it for a few moments, then turns back to the trembling coyote. Brian. Hope you don't mind the ice, but it should be cool enough to drink now. Still confused and terrified, and just wanting something to do, to focus on, Cameron reaches out for the mug the bear is holding out to him. He takes it in a trembling paw, gulping it down. It's filled with honey and the strong taste of ginger, and it's unlike any chamomile tea he's had before.
カモミールティーか。カモミールティーはなんかね、心を安らげる効果があるっつって、自分も一時期飲んでましたけど。めんどくさくなってやめちゃったんだけど。いいらしいですね。なんかね、なんだろう。ちょっと甘い感じのお茶なんですよね。なんかちょっと癖がある感じ。ジャスミンティーのちょっとまろやかになったバージョンみたいな。
The amount of honey is surprising, and he briefly wonders if it's a bear thing, even though Devon never seemed to have much of an affinity for it.
ホットで飲んでましたね。仕事がきつい時。病みそうになってたから、カモミールティーでなんとか心落ち着けようと思ったけど、まあダメでしたね。まあダメでした。仕事辞めるまで、やっぱ気分が伝えてたから、お茶じゃダメだったね。根本的に解決しないと意味ない、ね。ちょっとした悩みとか、夜寝れないとかなら、ジャスミンティーじゃないや。カモミールティーはいいんだと思う。
Still, Cameron doesn't get the full flavor of the concoction until he's finished it, and as he exhales, an odd, nutty taste mixed with what Cameron can only describe as dirt lingers on the back of his tongue. Cameron frowns at the bizarre, terrible tea.
そうなの。
He can't help pulling a face as he looks into the mug, a thick, round glob of honey
薬盛
remaining
られ
at
た
the
のか。
base while dark particles slowly collect around it. It's distracting enough that his panic attack is terminated before it can really begin.
なるほど、そういう効能か。
Brian laughs. Brian. Sorry about that. I like to add in carver root to soothe anxiety, too. Shoulda warned ya. Cameron had thought the taste was somehow familiar, but he supposes that any kind of root would have an earthy, bitter taste.
なんかオリジナル調合のお茶だったんだ。なんかありますよね、そういうの。なんだっけ、マウスウォッシュの、あれ。そう、リステリンのオリジナル味みたいな。今使ってるんですけど、リステリンのオリジナル。めちゃくちゃ味がきつい。やめとけよかっ 、本当に。ミント味にしときゃよかった。オリジナルはすごいですよ。なんだろう、あの味は。不思議な味。
Cameron.
どぎ
Oh,
つい。
it's okay. Just wasn't expecting it. I read about karma a few times when I was looking for ways to help with anxiety. Never tried it, though.
いや、本当にさ、アンキザイティに一番いいのって何なんでしょうね。まあ、食生活ももちろんそうなんだろうけど。辛いものとかさ、はやっぱ気分を落ち着かなくさせるからやめた方がいいんだなっていうのはわかるんだよね。辛いものとか、まあ、アルコール、カフェインは良くないよね。やっぱお茶とか、まあ野菜とか果物とか、そういうヘルシーなもの食べるのがいいんでしょうね。気持ちを落ち着けるためには。
Brian. Well, get ready for it to change your life. It got me off all my chill pill meds. I do have some leftover bars if you need something stronger, though. Cameron. Xanax. I'll wait and see.
出た。ザナックスの存在、フィドラーの歌で知った。ザナックス。なんかアメリカでは有名な、そういう抗うつ剤なのかな。
While that would be nice, Cameron already feels like falling asleep, so it doesn't seem like the best idea.
アメリカはやっぱさ、医療費が高いから保険とかがないからさ、国民保険とかいうのは。だから自分で薬を買う方が安くつくからみんな自分で市販薬を買うんですよね。自分で処方してみたいな。
While he mostly believes this man's story, he doesn't want to be completely unaware of what's happening right now.
だから飲みすぎちゃったりするんだろうな。
Brian, I'm guessing you've had some experience with it before, huh? Cameron. Cameron frowns at the table, not sure what to say. He doesn't really want to discuss his past with a stranger, even if the guy seems like he would understand. Brian puts his paws up, like he's showing that he's unarmed. Brian. Hey, I don't judge, kid. I was into that lifestyle for most of my life before I started turning things around. While Cameron is still cautious, he doesn't want to make it seem like he's suspicious. It doesn't feel like the best idea to sour things between him and the only other person with him in the middle of the desert. Cameron. Yeah, I did a bit of everything in middle school and high school. Only thing I got hooked on was opioids, though. Brian. Oof, you and half the country, kid. That's a rough one. The tiredness is starting to plateau, if not recede slightly, and Cameron feels an odd but welcome sense of empathy towards despair.
ザナックスとかどんな感じなんだ。
It must be the karma kicking in. Brian's face appears a bit more defined and clear, and there's a warmness in his eyes. Cameron. It was my first drug too. I experimented with everything else because I was trying to find something less addictive and harmful. Brian shakes his head. Brian. That's the problem with it. There ain't much out there that makes you feel that good. That's what I'm told, anyway. Brian chuckles. Brian. I took just one of my dad's hydros and ended up puking my guts out for hours. Guess I'm lucky that I can't keep them down. Cameron thinks about that, about how nice it would have been if he had become violently ill whenever he tried opioids, or any drug, for that matter. Cameron. Yeah, I'd say that's some good luck. I quit in college and haven't done it since, though. Brian. Good for you. Brian gazes down his nose at Cameron, starting to frown. Cameron's ears twitch as he senses a sudden change in mood. Brian. Now, I don't mean to bring this up again, but did your, visions get more intense when you did heroin? At first, Cameron wants to correct the mayor and say that he's never done heroin, but then stops as he thinks back. Of course, his visions got worse whenever he was on certain drugs, including opioids, but he had assumed back then that they were just agitating his already present delusion. It was only today that he'd made the connection between drug usage and hallucinations, or visions. Cameron. Yeah, actually, and a few times on other stuff too. Does that happen to you, Brian? Definitely. Again, feelings of empathy grow in the coyote's chest. There are others like him, just like him. Cameron. Maybe I'm not going crazy, then. I keep going back and forth on that. Brian chuckles a bit. Brian. Well, not normal crazy, anyway, right? Say. Brian looks carefully at Cameron again, and the coyote is almost distracted by the glow that seems to be emanating from the bear's eyes. Oddly enough, the intensely vivid and defined fur seems to be rippling, as if flowing in the wind, even though they're inside. Is this karma?
カオルちゃんだよね。
Brian,
多
you
分。
ever tried something more trippy, like acid, or shrooms? Cameron shifts uncomfortably at the last word. Cameron, yeah, both. Acid was fine, but
Acid.
nothing weird happened. Shrooms just kind of fucked me up, and I saw all kinds of things.
まあいろんな麻薬っていろんな種類があるけど、それぞれ効能が違うんだね。依
Brian,
存性と
HM,
か。
that's too bad. That one can be a real eye-opener, Cameron. Oh, Cameron isn't sure what else to say, feeling just a bit uncomfortable again.
このクマはいろいろやってんだ。
Brian, but yeah, most drugs make you see more things. Only ones that don't are stims. It's why so many people here got into meth.
メスね。ブルーメス。
Brian chuckles again, but this time it sounds a bit dark, sinister,
メスは
even.
相当強い部類なんだろうな。ヘロインとメス。ヘロインとコカインの違いもよくわかってない。
Brian, only problem with that is meth still makes you
コー
see
ラって
shit,
もともと
but
コカイ
only
ンが入っ
because
て
it
たんで
makes
し
you
ょ。
go crazy. Arches and half circles. Cameron, yeah. Cameron looks back down at the table. He wonders about his mother again, and if maybe she was like him. Maybe she took the stimulants because she was just trying to stop the visions, but ended up starting a wave of hallucinations and delusions instead.
基本的に麻薬がテーマなのかなこの話。
Cameron watches the wood grain on the table shift and move slightly, like waves on an ocean.
いまいちピンとこないんだよな。
And then it hits him. It
やばい
hits him hard.
やばい、視界が。
The aftertaste of the tea, why it was familiar, why things are moving in inexplicable ways, why everything is feeling more fucked up by the second he's been here before. A moment seems to blank out of existence from Cameron's memory because the next thing he knows, he's already standing up, the chair sliding back behind him. He stares at Brian with wide eyes, mouth open, but he can't seem to say anything. He can't think of what to say if the mayor did what he thinks he did. Brian stares back, watching Cameron carefully in a way that tells the coyote that the mayor isn't surprised at all by this reaction, and that makes Cameron even more afraid. The cozy, dreamy lighting of the trailer becomes more ominous, red and dangerous, and the mayor in front of him seems to warp.
うわぁ。into a demon.
Cameron. No, 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 what did you give me?
持ってたんだよ。
Cameron looks wildly at the coffee mug. Brian. You need to calm down, understand, Cameron. What did you give me? Brian. I think you already know the answer to that, so why don't you sit down and get it together? The mayor's face is so warped, but Cameron honestly can't tell if it's real or not. Cameron. Was it psilocybin? Did you drug me with shrooms? Brian says nothing, and he's right that Cameron knows.
まあ森で取れるやばいキノコ。
He could never forget this feeling. Cameron. Oh my god, why? It ruined my life. Cameron is heaving for breath, the sounds of his gasping almost drowning the mayor out. Brian. Sit down, and I'll explain. But Cameron has no intention of sitting down. The sensations and visuals are just as bad as the last time, if not worse, and he's only at the beginning. The fear and panic reach a dizzying level, and Cameron is running around the table for the door. Then he's on his back, his chest, spine, and the back of his head aching.
うえ、
Brian is
や
on
ばい。
top of him,
侵され
and
る。
Cameron is on his back. He can see the coffee mug shattered on the ground a few feet away.
やばいやばいやばいやばいやばいやばい。
He can see the coffee mug shattered on Brian. Calm down. Remember what I said about depersonalization? The only thing you can do is not think about it, otherwise I'm gonna knock you out. Cameron struggles, wheezing for breath. Cameron. Let me go. I can't breathe. Brian responds by squeezing his arms tighter, leaning more weight on Cameron's torso. Cameron. Arg. Stop. I'm sorry. He doesn't even know what he's apologizing for, just hoping that maybe it'll get the mayor to stop. Brian. Heh, and I thought you were cute when you were smiling.
やばいやばいやばい。
That statement, for whatever reason, is the scariest part of what's happening right now. He starts to scream for the only person he can think of right now. Cameron. Devon. Help me. Devon.
来てくれる
Brian.
のか
Shut the fuck up. Brian sounds legitimately disgusted as he pulls himself off of Cameron. The coyote prepares to scream again, but sees Brian's foot lash out and kick him in the side, sending him up against the base of the counter. Then, leaning over him with both of his giant paws on the edge of the counter, he starts kicking Cameron over and over. Cameron yelps and wheezes, the blows hard enough that he's worried the bear is definitely going to break something if he hasn't already. He thrashes and rolls, trying to escape. Then, one kick catches him particularly hard at the base of his sternum and he violently curls up, a loud, frog-like croaking noise
弱
escaping
い。
his
や
throat.
めろ。
Brian pauses as the sounds continue emanating from Cameron's mouth. Cameron can hear the bear breathing heavily over him as Brian watches his agonized writhing, almost like he's fascinated by it. After nearly a minute, the terrible noises turn back to gasps, which then turn into sobs as Cameron stays curled up on his side, one arm around his midsection while the other is pressed over his eyes. Brian doesn't move, just watching as Cameron cries on the floor. At first, Cameron thinks it might be better to just keep his eyes closed and try to disappear into the darkness, maybe wake up again, but in a new place this time. Anywhere seems better than here. But that's when odd, slightly curved glowing red lines begin expanding and shrinking behind his eyelids, and Cameron whines at the terrible reminder of what's going to happen. He's going to trip, and it's going to be terrible. Cameron pulls his paw away from his eyes and finds that what he sees isn't much better. The huge bear is crouched in front of him, his fur now a writhing, pulsating mass of a thing that almost seems like another living creature covering the bear. Brian, listen. What you do next is gonna determine what's gonna happen to you. This is a dream. It has to be a dream. Everything that's happened, not just in this trailer, but in this whole town.
やっぱトレーラー
It
かしか
has to
し
be a dream, a hallucination, a trick. This can't be happening. Brian, I need you to talk to some folks I used to know. If you're really one of those psychics, if you can fix my problems, I'll let you go like nothing happened.
ほう
Bevan. Cameron. Bevan comes to again, and
Yo,
he
ya
blurts out
cállate,
the name without thinking. He's not sure how long it's been since the last time he woke up. It feels like hours, possibly even days, since he was last conscious. He'd been dreaming. Something about insects crawling and biting his arms, and tornadoes. A twisting force. He realizes then that his arms are what brought him back to the waking world. They'd fallen asleep, and now the tingling is so bad that it feels like they are covered in crawling, writhing ants made of molten lead. The bear grunts in discomfort and tries to bring them down from above his head, but he isn't able to. They come up short, and he hears a rattling sound close to his ears, which twitch at the loudness. Chains.
どっちの視点これ
Bevan freezes, keeping his eyes closed, unsure if whoever did this to him is close by. Although it's hard to think through all of the haziness, the memories come back to him rather quickly. First, he remembers walking deeper into the woods before the strange bear went into his trailer to get something. He came out with a bottle of water, claiming it was for Cameron. Then, after walking further into the dense forest, they came upon a white van, the exact kind of van that would make most people suspicious. Bevan did become more suspicious, but by that time it was already too late. The old bear had pulled a gun on them, one that wasn't his shotgun, and told them both to get in the van. Artie started to run, and the other bear didn't hesitate to shoot him, aiming for his head.
え
Bevan isn't sure, but he could swear that he saw a spray of something, whether it be fur, blood, or worse, fan out from the back of Artie's head
撃たれ
before
た
he
の
dropped.
ライオンの人
Bevan's fingers and toes clench inward as he thinks about that moment, the sound, the suddenness of it, but mostly he remembers the way Artie fell. It was instant, like strings that held him up had been cut, crumpling so quickly that Bevan is sure that he'd been killed. At that point, Bevan did everything the old bear had told him to do, including lying Cameron on the rough desert floor. Bevan tries to keep from whining as he wonders if that might be the last time he saw Cameron, and then laid down in the van and letting him bind his arms up. He'd thought about fighting back in that moment, but it was so quick that before he knew it,
ちょっとイ
he
ラス
was
ト欲しい
secured
よな
and he was made to drink from the bottle. Now he's in the very center of the tornado. A twisting force. Bevan clenches his eyes shut even tighter, feeling moisture gather at the corners. Around the point is equal to force times distance, but he opens them a moment later, realizing that his captor would have seen all the movements he'd made. Perpendicular to force,
これ何これ
he's alone in the van. His eyes sting, and the bear realizes that he's sweating heavily. This metallic box he's stuck in is hot, almost overwhelmingly stifling.
え閉じ込められ
He
てんって
worries
こ
for
と
a moment that he's slept through the night, and now it's sunrise, and he's about to cook to death in this van. But after gauging the light, he decides it's still around sunset, just a few hours after what had happened, after Artie had been killed. Bevan. Shit. Bevan squeezes his eyes shut again, feeling tears leak out and into the moist fur on his cheeks. He allows himself this moment, but quickly focuses again, knowing Cameron is still out there, with that bear. That's enough to get a rise from Bevan, one that builds into a wave in his chest.
まあ結局悪いやつだった。
A combination of adrenaline and terror, but mostly fury. While the brutality of this backwoods bear evokes fear in Bevan, it also makes him angry that anyone would feel they have the right to do what the old bear did. He opens his eyes again and takes in his surroundings. He's lying flat on his back, arms stretched above his head. He can feel that it's a pair of handcuffs that are holding him in place. There's enough give that, slowly, he's able to turn over on his stomach. The action is incredibly painful, and Bevan can't help but grunt loudly, his arms feeling like they might fall off as they spasm. Slowly, painfully, he pulls himself up into a kneeling position, getting a better look at his predicament. He realizes then that these handcuffs are more like shackles, meant to hold bear-sized creatures like himself in place. They are bolted into the floor of the van. Bevan glances up suddenly, his ears catching what sounds like a faint cry outside the van. Bevan. Cameron. Bevan's voice comes out hoarse and cracked once more. Was that Cameron? It sounded like him. Bevan is still groggy from whatever was in that bottle of
結局
water,
同じ
but
パンの
he's
中
sure
にい
he
たっ
heard
て
the
こと
distinct sound of his boyfriend's voice. The fact that it's now so suddenly absent convinces Bevan that was definitely Cameron. He strains to listen for several more seconds, but can't hear anything. He looks down at the heavy chain linking the metal cuffs around his wrists, unbreakable. Still, he finds himself foolishly yanking at the shackles, hoping there'll be some kind of give in the slightly rusted chain and bolt. Bevan. Tears fill Bevan's eyes, the feeling of falling forever returning. He'd felt this way only a few times before, the first time being while he was running home, after he'd found Lupita's body, the last time being when he saw Archero getting shot. And now, knowing that his boyfriend could be at the mercy of this bear, whose intentions Bevan can't even begin to guess, he just knows that they're horrific. But seeing the faces of those people, it changes something in Bevan. A cool, icy calm descends on him, and he looks at the chains carefully. His classes in physics had taught him all about the way in which forces exerted can seemingly accomplish things that seem impossible. So, even while his heart hammers in his ears, and even while his brain is clouded with a dense fog of sedation, Talk.
トーク。
Cameron stays curled up on the floor for what feels like a
今度
long
はキャメロ
time.
ンか。
He had ultimately decided that he'd rather watch the harmless, pulsating arches dance behind his eyelids, rather than the nightmare the trailer is becoming. Every minute or so, the reality of the situation hits the coyote, and a burst of whimpering gasps escape his muzzle for a few minutes before fading back to only whimpering. Every minute, prefs, every minute, options, rollback, options, auto forward, deactivate. Every minute or so, the reality of the every minute or so, the reality of the situation hits the coyote, and a burst of whimpering gasps escape his muzzle for a few minutes before fading back to only whimpering. He would stay down there until his trip was over, but Brian ended up pulling him back to where he was sitting.
遅いな、やっぱり。今オート入ってるよね。
At this point, the coyote doesn't fight the bear, going at this point, the coyote doesn't option text auto deactivate activate the option. At this point, the coyote doesn't fight the bear, going limp while his body is pulled along. For a minute, Brian tries to get him to sit in the chair, but eventually just gives up, dropping Cameron next to the table where he just lies on the floor. The coyote listens to the old bear moving around the trailer, though it's barely audible over his own gasping sobs. Eventually, those lumbering, shuffling footsteps come closer, and Cameron knows that the old bear is crouching next to him, though the coyote still doesn't open his eyes. Brian. Listen, kid. Since you ain't gonna calm down, you're taking some Zans, got it? Cameron listens, but doesn't move, afraid to do anything. Then he flinches as a rough, calloused paw grabs up his chin, forcing his mouth open slightly.
何なの?
Finally, Cameron opens his eyes a bit, and almost gasps at the vivid, red lighting, which keeps him distracted until something falls into his mouth. A pill, and Cameron recognizes its distinct, bar shape, and bitter taste. Brian holds out a cup, a plastic one that Cameron looks at with undisguised fear. Brian. It's just water. The old bear gestures at the counter where a gallon jug sits. When Cameron still doesn't move, Brian sighs. Then he gets up, grabs a cup straight out of the sink, and pours it half full before drinking it. Cameron's mouth is as dry as the desert surrounding them, likely due to a combination of drugs and fear, and he really does want to swallow the pill to get rid of the taste. So he takes the cup and drinks, swallowing the Xanax, and despite his fear, he drinks until the cup is empty. He vaguely remembers his high school friends telling him to drink water to make his trip less intense. Cameron has the feeling that it probably won't change anything. Brian takes the cup from the coyote's limp paw, and it takes Cameron a second to realize that the bear is holding out another pill that looks like a small, red square. Brian, now put this one under your tongue. Cameron stares, trying to figure out if it's just the trip making it look that color, or... Brian sighs again, becoming more impatient. Brian, I broke a third off the bar I gave you. But now, Cameron is sure the pill is actually red, and he draws back. A counterfeit pill, and that probably means it's cut with something. Something like opioids. Cameron, I don't.
え、殴ら
Brian
れたのか
slaps him, the
スラッ
strike
プか。
coming so fast that the coyote isn't even sure what happened. The sudden, numbing sting on the left side of his face, along with the bright flash of light is very, very familiar though, and Cameron feels as though he's traveled 7 years back in time. His delayed reaction is a surprised gasp as he raises his arms over his face. The bear yanks his arms back down and thrusts the pill at his muzzle. This time, the coyote opens his mouth willingly,
なんか無理やり
maneuvering
薬
the
飲ま
pill
さ
to
れて
sit under his tongue. His movements feel almost robotic
治
at
験
this
みたい
point.
な。
To Cameron's immense relief, this seems to satisfy the bear, and Brian gets up from his crouching position, backing away. The coyote sits there a moment, then slowly drags himself under the table, huddling in a corner as tears well up in his eyes again. After going through all that, and knowing that there's plenty more to go through, Cameron longs for Devon more than he ever has before. He waits until the pill dissolves before asking the question that he dreads hearing the answer to. Cameron, is Devon, the bear, is he still alive? If this giant, violent bear had encountered Devon and Artie, there's no telling what he might have done to them. His heart drops as the bear seems to hesitate. Cameron, please tell me the truth. Cameron needs to know. Brian, the bear's fine. He's locked up, but fine.
お
His
正
tone
直だ。
sounds genuine, and even though Cameron will never
Genuine.
trust him, he has to hold on to some hope. Cameron, and if I do this for you, you'll let him go, too? Brian, that's the plan. He your boyfriend? Cameron isn't sure how best to respond to that, so he doesn't. Brian shrugs. Brian, doesn't matter much to me. Just do what I tell you, and you'll both be out of here by tomorrow. It's quiet for a moment, and Brian moves to the other end of the trailer, opening the fridge and doing whatever it is he does. Cameron doesn't bother keeping
何
track.
がしたいんだろうね、このクマ。
Brian, let me know when you start seeing shit. Got something to do real quick. Cameron blurts out the other question weighing heavy on his mind. Cameron, and Archero, the cat, is he?
死んでるか
Brian
ら。
doesn't look back and just sighs again. Cameron doesn't ask any follow-up questions, feeling like he got his answer. The thought that Artie might be gone is too messed up for his drugged-up mind, especially because he feels certain that he can't be gone. Cameron can't explain why, but he just feels it. He feels Dev, and he feels Artie. Brian stands next to the door, holding a plastic water bottle. Brian, gonna go out for about 5 minutes. I'll be right next to the trailer, so if I see you try anything, I'll shoot your boyfriend in front of you, then I'll kill you, eventually.
イベンチュアリーってのは怖い。
Cameron doesn't move. But soon, the trip
じわじわ殺す
intensifies, and he hugs himself, the movement making his ribs ache from the earlier kicks. He just watches the vivid colors and shapes of his hallucinations. Meanwhile, the acrid taste of Xanax lingers on his tongue.
なんでザナックス飲ませたいんだろ
He hadn't felt any pain. He doesn't feel any pain right now, either. Not physically, at least. It's something deeper. It's about who he used to be, who he is now, and who he's about to become. Something profoundly terrible has happened, and it's changed everything. He knows that much, at least. What he really wishes to know right now is who the hell he even is. He tries to think back to what he last remembers. Standing in front of everyone in the second grade, his trembling paws holding his book report. He clears his throat, trying to figure out how to put his sentences together in advance. Speak up, Archero. The whole class needs to hear you. Archero. That's his name.
Archero.
Archero Ferreira.
アーチェロってもう死んだんでしょ
He opens his eyes.
生きてんのちょっとよくわかんないな。
But how did he end up here? Where are his classmates? Otto, where are his classmates? Second grade, or was it third? No, he's positive that he's at least in high school. He tries again to remember what happened last. He was sitting in the junior parking lot with his girlfriend. She was upset because another girl at school was being mean to her. She's a Jaguar, sitting in the passenger seat of his beat-up sedan, one of her feet up on the dash, and he's leaning toward her to kiss her on the cheek. What's her name? Sarah Mendoza. Or was it Montoya? But now he remembers that they didn't last long at all, maybe only a semester, probably because he sucks at comforting people. He does always say the wrong thing at the wrong time. But he still had several girlfriends after her, up until... Archero. Mama Maria. His voice is so alien, so strange, it startles him a bit. What's even more strange is how hard it is to even say her name. He stutters, and he has to chew around the syllables like he's biting at the letters. As he does, he notices a sour taste in his mouth, and he can smell vomit. Looking at the forest floor in front of his face, and he sees a dried mess of what he's sure is the source of the smell. Bits of something orange and mushy, and chunks of what he recognizes as jerky. Things are starting to come together, but it takes a long time, maybe even an hour as he goes in and out of consciousness. Maria, Pueblo, Devon, psychology, graduation, behavioral tech, road trip, accident, echo, Cameron, THC cartridge, vision, ghost, panic, bear, gunshot. Gunshot. He's been shot.
Yeah.
It's only now that he realizes his current position. Curled up on his side, arms folded up in front of his chest. He tries to move his arms, but like everything else he's trying to do, it's very difficult. His muscles feel unnervingly weak, and every time he moves, it comes with an uncontrollable twitching and trembling. Archero stares at his paws, watching the tremors, trying to quell the panic. Finally, he slowly manages to sit up. Immediately, dizziness overtakes him, and he has to pause for several seconds before he's sure he's not going to fall back down. Once he's sitting up, his stomach turns, and he dry heaves, and that's when he feels the pain. It's not terrible, but the deep, cold throb at the back of his head feels remarkably wrong. With a shaking paw, he reaches back, and finally feels the damage. The fur is crusted and matted, becoming a bit damp as he gets closer to the source.
名店レストランみたいな。名店レストランも終わっちゃいましたね。最終回。いい漫画だったんだけどな。途中救済してたけど。
Archero gasps, realizing the stiff, jagged thing he's running a finger over is his broken skull. He jerks his paw away, breathing hard. He was shot in the head. In the head. He remembers deciding to run, since the shotgun wasn't loaded, but then the bear had taken out another gun, a handgun, and then... How is he alive? How long will he stay alive? Is there a bullet in his brain right now? He knows he needs something, so he tries to ask for it. Archero. NNN needs shelf. Melt. He struggles to not stutter, to say the right word that he knows he's trying to use. This is bad. Devon was hurt too, maybe even killed. And Cameron, he was already hurt, and it was a monster in this forest that hurt him. The cat brings his knees up to his chest, putting his arms around them like he's child. He feels like a child, helpless and completely confused as he sits injured in this terrible forest. This must be some kind of awful dream, and he wants to wake up, but even though everything feels unfamiliar, surreal, dreamlike, he knows this is real. Archero feels his face crumple as he starts to cry, pushing his forehead against his knees. Archero. INNN need, summon, something. No, wrong words. Archero. I need someone. There's some relief as Archero feels like he's improving at least a little bit. Maybe this is only temporary. He'd been told several times in his psych and neuroscience courses that the brain is plastic. The fact that he's recalling these memories, making sense of these memories, gives him hope, but there are still certain things, very simple things, that are missing. Cameron. Ruined my life. Archero jerks his head to look up, heaving again as another wave of dizziness and nausea sweeps through him. Archero. Cameron. See Cameron. He looks in the direction of the sound and sees a trailer, partially hidden behind tree trunks and bushes, about 30 feet away. His right ear pops loudly several times, and he rubs at it, feeling fluid come out. He knows it's blood. The cat slowly begins to stand up, and immediately gets a terrible shock as he realizes the weakness he'd felt in his arms is also in his legs. He struggles and stumbles his way to the tree, trying not to panic again before finally leaning up against it. Cameron. Me go. I can't breathe. Archero realizes he's not the only one in this nightmare. Did the monster come back for Cameron. I'm sorry. Archero starts moving toward the trailer before it dawns on his shattered, bewildered mind that he's looking at that bear's trailer. The one that shot him, and he must have Cameron in there. Cameron. Devon. Help me. Devon. Archero flinches back at the sound, and his fur bristles out along his spine, eyes wide as Cameron's screaming echoes through the forest. The cat looks around desperately, hoping that Devon does come to help. Even though that evil bear is bigger, Devon's a pretty big bear too, and he would stand a much better chance than he himself would. Thuds followed by yelps and howls come next, and finally, it's too much for Archero. Archero. Dev, why you're Cameron? He can't go in there like this, he knows that, but he can get help. Maybe. Depending on how bad it is, these problems he's having could get a lot worse over the course of just a few hours. But he has no choice. While he knows he has a car, he also knows that he can't use it, even though he can't remember why. He remembers that there's a highway, the one that they should have gone to the second he got here. He needs to get them all help. So, with one more terrified look at that trailer, he starts to make his way out of the forest. At first, Archero is filled with a sense of hopelessness as he finds out just how hard it is to walk, with his right side being almost limp. It feels like half of his muscles have just wasted away. But, after some trial and error, he finds that if he widens his stance a bit, and swings his arms in a way that looks a bit lopsided, he's able to keep his balance. His pace is reasonable as well, so, swallowing down his panic again, he makes his way back onto the dirt road. Even through the disbelief of his situation, and even though he's terrified for Cameron and Devon, he feels something deep down that's even worse. He tries to ignore it, but it gnaws at the back of his brain. He's dying. And he can feel it. Devon struggles with his handcuffs, trying to get the chain into the position that he wants. He pulls his paws up until the chain is taut, then moves slowly in a circle around the bolt, until the chain twists on itself. That was the easy part, and based on the tension he felt being put on the chain links, he had been feeling pretty confident. But then he'd spent what feels like the last hour trying to actually put enough force and weight into the motion so that the chain would break. While the twisted chain is taking most of the pressure off his own wrists, it still hurts. Devon can see through his fur that he's already starting to bleed from his wrists, and fur is coming off in small tufts with each failed twist and jerk. Devon, come on, David, please. After another failed heave, Devon slumps with his paws pressed to the floor of the van, gasping and sweating. A wave of dizziness comes over him, and he ends up pressing his face to the metal floor. Devon, please help me. Devon half-heartedly prays, just in case there is something above all of this.
ブラックフォンとかもそうだけどさ。
Devon scrambles to twist back around and step over the anchoring bolt so that his paws are behind him again, sitting up to face the back door of the van.
なんとかクローバーフィールド。
Devon finds himself staring at the bear
あれ
that
面白
did
かっ
this
た
to
な。
him. Even though he doesn't want Cameron anywhere near this man, seeing that the coyote isn't there with Brian sends panic through the younger bear. Devon, what do you want? Where's Cameron? Please. Brian, shut
Brian.
it. Devon watches with dread as he sees the huge bear holding that water bottle. Devon, please, just tell me what you want. I'll give it to you. Just let me see him. His teeth snap together, and the next thing the bear knows is that his head is resting against the metal cage partition that separates the back of the van from the seats. Dazed, his chin is on his chest,
あ、
his
車の
arms
中
under
に
his
閉じ込められ
back,
てんのかな
forcing him to arch his chest and stomach toward the van's roof. Then Brian is on him, pressing the bottle to his lips. Dazed from the punch, Devon can only mumble in protest. Devon. No, no. Devon sees the look in the other bear's eyes, and he knows that eventually he's going to have to drink from the bottle again. Feeling completely defeated, Devon continues to plead with the man. Devon. Wait, just wait. Please, just tell me what you want. Is he okay? Brian. Boy, you're really starting to piss me off. If you don't do what the fuck I tell you. Brian grabs Devon's chest fur in both paws and hauls him up so he's sitting in a more upright position. Brian. I'm gonna take it out on your little cocksock yote, you understand me? Now, shut up. But Devon can't shut up. He's half convinced that Cameron is already dead. Devon. Please, just let me see him so I know he's okay. Brian. Alright, I was gonna say you already earned him one good hit. Now it's two. Wanna add a third? Devon just stares. Of course, he knows that Brian doesn't need an excuse, that if he really wants to hurt Cameron, he can. Because there's nothing Devon can do. He can only do what the older bear tells him to do, so he opens his muzzle. Slowly, Brian pours the slightly bitter water into his mouth, and Devon drinks. Even though his body wants to keep drinking, Devon starts to pull back after only a few swallows, as if he's had enough, and doesn't even suspect the water is drugged. But Brian pushes the bottle hard enough that Devon's lips are painfully mashed between the plastic and his own teeth, and he's forced to keep drinking. Even when he lets a tiny bit dribble out from the corner of his mouth, Brian growls more threats at him. Eventually, the water is gone, and Devon hangs his head in defeat as Brian pulls back, backing out of the van. Brian. I'll be back to check on you. Don't think I need to tell you what'll happen if you even think of trying to puke that up. Devon squeezes his eyes shut, wishing this fucking bear would just tell him what's happening, what he's doing to Cameron, why he's keeping him alive. But the younger bear is too afraid to talk, too afraid of what Brian might do, so without another word, the van door is slammed shut.
Yep. 脱出できんのか。
Cameron stays under the table, the Xanax having kicked in fully by this
幽霊どころの騒ぎじゃないじゃん。
point, leaving the coyote in a bit of a quiet, stoic haze. His sobbing has trailed off, not much emotion left in him, just feeling numb. His trip is getting more and more intense, and he knows that the peak is nearing, maybe in another half an hour. Still, he begins to notice things that he's sure aren't part of his trip. A presence, not too far away, one that he knows very well. Dev. With no idea what he's doing, he instinctively reaches out toward that warm energy, but then he's interrupted by another presence he doesn't recognize, one that's much closer. Cameron gets on his paws and knees, looking out from under the table. This vision is definitely different than anything he's experienced before. Unlike the dreamlike, reality-altering psilocybin, the vision he's entered has a clarity to it, like he's not even tripping at all. The figure of something, someone appears before him, and Cameron knows everything immediately.
誰
Benjamin Kowalski, a rabbit, born in 1977, ran away from his Pueblo home when he was 16. For several years, he moved from city to city, sometimes in neighboring states, before settling in Peyton. He stocked shelves at a grocery store, and the extra money he saved up would fund his weed supply. Brian was his dealer. In September 1998, he agreed to let Brian take him to his trailer home in Echo. He was promised 2 ounces of weed in exchange for one night of lovemaking, as the bear had put it. Benjamin wasn't gay, and even if he was pretty sure Brian wouldn't be his type. 2 ounces was a lot, though, and way too good to pass up. After 4 days of torture, Brian accidentally strangled him for too long, and Benjamin didn't regain consciousness. Of course, Brian planned on killing him anyway, so he did. The bear was only disappointed that he didn't get a few more days with him. Timothy Esposito was a skunk born in 1985 in the Midwest. His hometown was a large, industrial city, one that had been in decay for his entire life. So, he transplanted to Mesa, and in May 2005, that was where he attended a BDSM-themed event in an unused warehouse. He liked breath play, and so did Brian, so they fooled around a bit.
窒息プ
He
レイね。
didn't much like Brian, but the bear liked him a lot. Brian liked him so much, in
一
fact,
方的
that he
に。
followed the skunk as he walked home after the event and kidnapped him on an empty street. Timothy was strong, and almost escaped multiple times, once managing to leave the trailer before being caught just a few dozen feet from the dirt road. Brian continued their breath play, except now it wasn't play at all, and after 2 weeks, Brian again suffocated his victim for too long. This time, Brian thought he was fairly successful in keeping his victim alive that long.
相当殺し
Daniel
てたんだ
Gallegos
ね。
was a ferret born in 1996. He was from the Sonoran capital, but was staying with family in Mill City to work a summer job. He was saving up money for his university tuition. In August 2014, days before he was meant to head back to Sonora, he met Brian outside a club before being kidnapped and driven to Echo. Brian was able to keep him for an entire month, and even though a few of Brian's customers had seen him tied to the torture rack, no one said a thing. Eventually, Brian seemed to decide he'd gotten all he could out of the ferret, and he bludgeoned Daniel to death with an old tire iron, just because he wanted to try something different. The bear couldn't believe how long it took, how hard he had to hit the kid before he finally stopped moving. Brian. Cameron. Cameron is jolted back to reality as he yanked up by his shirt so he's not even touching the floor. Brian's paws hold the front of his shirt while shaking him violently. Cameron. WH what? What is it? Cameron kicks around to try and get his feet on
連
solid
続殺
ground
人鬼だっ
again.
たんだな。
Despite being almost overwhelmed by the numbing calm of Xanax, it's not enough to
殺
stop
すな
the
ら早く
primal
殺
fear
してほしい
Cameron
よ
has of
ね。
despair.
拷問
Especially not
さ
after
れた
seeing
くな
the
い。
horrors he committed on those men. What he'd just seen was
逃げ出
condensed,
せるな
distilled
らそ
into
れが
an easy to
一番
follow
だけど。
series of events, but all the while, he'd absorbed all the tiny details, too. He knows Brian promised these men many things, that he'd only keep them for 1, 2, 3 more days before letting them go. That if they'd just be a little more quiet, he'd let them go. But Cameron knows none of those promises were kept. The visions had been so real that to Cameron, it felt like he'd been there for everything they went through. Luckily, he hadn't felt anything, but it was as if he was in the room with them, this room. Brian seems to gain some control over himself, and lets go of the coyote. Cameron isn't able to stand with his weak, shaking legs, and sits down heavily on the ground, looking up at the looming bear. Brian. Kept calling your name, and you wouldn't answer. I told you to let me know if the visions were starting. Cameron. I couldn't. Brian waits, looking more impatient the more Cameron stammers, which only makes him stammer more. Brian. I swear to fucking God, why do all of you become whimpering little dipshits the second I lose my cool for like a second? He reaches down, and Cameron cringes as he's yanked up to his feet again. It's clear that Brian wants him to keep standing this time, so he does, steadying himself against the table behind him. Brian. Quit that crying. He does his best to stop, but the sobs keep coming. Brian, the visions, the people he'd just felt, it's not an easy thing to just shrug off. Brian. I said to quit, not be quieter. Cameron's mouth dries up even more, his tongue now sandpaper against the roof of his mouth as fear helps shock him into a statue-like state. Cameron knows he owes a lot to the sedative right now. Without it, he wouldn't be able to stop, and Brian might kill him. Brian. That's better, but faster next time, got it? Cameron. Okay.
マインドコン
Cameron
トロールされ
opens
て
his
る。
mouth to answer, but finds himself yanked forward suddenly, only to
主
come
従
to a
関係
horrible,
をね、
jarring stop as the bear slams his knee
作
into
ろう
the
とする
coyote's
から
torso.
な。拷問
Cameron
する
watches
人
the
は。
luminous arches writhe about, convulsing, almost like they are mirroring the coyote's inner turmoil.
でも
The knee is
さ
so、big
こういう状
compared to
況下だった
himself
ら
that it
さ、
seems to cover most of his stomach.
絶対復讐するふりをして逃げ出す隙を伺った方がいいよ
He still earned you
な。
one
あるいは
more.
復讐するか、
Brian finally pulls back, and
反撃
Cameron
するか、
crumples
逃
to
げ
the
るか。
ground, unable to process what Brian is saying, not
自
that
分の
he'd
身
be
を
able
守
to
るために
understand it anyway.
誘
The
拐され
coyote
たら
lets
ね。
out guttural groans over and over again. Brian. HM. What's that you're saying? Brian taunts him from above, and Cameron responds with a whooping gasp, pressing his face into the floor in agony. Brian. I asked you a fucking question. Cameron is lifted into the air again, feeling his feet kick around for purchase on the ground as he
こ
once
れジェ
again
フアニメで
dangles
やっ
from
てん
his
だよ
shirt,
な、多
the
分。
fabric stretching to the point that Cameron can hear the threads popping in
やばい
his
やばい。
collar. Cameron cracks open an eye and sees Brian drawing back a huge paw, and Cameron manages to choke out a few words with the tiny amount of air he's gathered into his collapsed lungs. Cameron. No, nothing. Nothing. Cameron wheezes loudly between the words, knowing that this is exactly what Brian likes, but how can he stop himself? He's not even sure if stopping himself will help. Maybe that will only trigger Brian into hurting him more. But to Cameron's relief, the bear pauses, then slowly drops his fist. Cameron sees the wild look in Brian's eyes gradually leave as he stares at the gasping coyote in his grasp. Brian. Good. Guess I'll save the other for later, then. The bear lets go, and Cameron slumps back to his knees, curling up again in the fetal position. Brian. Now, what was it you saw?
いやいや。
He
言うのか
didn't
な。
feel any pain. But now he does. Speak up, Archero. The whole class
Archero.
needs to hear you.
アーチェロ
He's
ー
in
なんで
front
生きて
of
んの？
20 curious, attentive eyes while his paws shake, almost making his papers rattle. He's had less than a year to learn a new language, and now they expect him to give an entire book report. He'd give anything to be in his room, gaming on his brand new PlayStation 2, but first,
PlayStation
he has to
2
figure out how to survive these next 5 minutes. He's playing on his PlayStation in his dorm room when Maria walks in.
夏いなー、プレス
Hey,
2。
beautiful, you able to get
サ
some
イレン
sleep?
トヒル
He
2、
doesn't
プレ
look
ス
up
2
from
でや
his
ったよ
game.
な。プ
Maria.
レステ
Oh,
2が一
you
番
showed
遊んだ
over
かも
overflow.
な。
That makes him look up.
末置き機では。
Archero. Huh? She
3
looks
までは
confused,
遊んだ記憶
frustrated.
があるけど。
Maria. Born and
4は買わ
sworn
な
at,
かっ
and
た。
to mourn
5
and
なん
fall
て
on.
持ってのほかだよね。
He puts down the controller and
高す
stands
ぎ。
up. Archero. Baby, what? Archero installs a lock on the medicine cabinet. He helps her eat healthy. He helps make sure she goes to bed at the right time. Whenever she feels a mood swing approaching, high or low, they prepare together. Maria once cried and told him that she wasn't worth it, that he should find someone that isn't an unpredictable mess. He told her she was definitely worth it, and that they just need to be prepared. Archero opens his eyes, and then cringes at the ache in his head. Not an ache, but an explosion ripping through his skull, his brains, and down his spine. It hurts so much that he lets out a sound that's a half moan, half scream. This time, it seems to take even longer for him to understand where and when he is. He had been moving as fast as he could without actually running or jogging since he isn't even capable of doing that. He guessed he had probably made it 2 miles away from Echo, so 7 more to go. He had just been thinking about how he was walking almost exactly like his grandfather did after his stroke, and Archero had thought, now we'll actually have something to bond over before it happened. A dizzy spell unlike all the others made him stumble, like he was looking over the edge of a cliff. Then anxiety like he'd never known before overcame him, making his heart beat so fast Archero was convinced it was going to explode. He got on his knees, started praying for help, and then...
なんでここ読んでくん
He
ないの？
had a seizure, and even though he's never had one before, he knows
多分
that's
ダッ
what
シュから
happened.
始まる文章
At
が読ん
least
で
he
くれ
was
ない
on
んだ
his
な。
knees so his face didn't have far to fall. Still, he's left feeling so exhausted, so defeated that he just wants to lay there. He'd been in a half-dream state, completely confused as he stared around him, memories flicking through his mind like a viewmaster. An hour had passed, maybe 2, before he finally understood what his situation was again. He almost wants to go back to that confused state, pretend it's a dream. But now he's crying, because how is he going to take care of Maria if he can barely walk, barely talk? She's good at taking care of herself, but he needs to be there, just in case. He needs to live, and he needs to get better. And while he's glad to be out of Echo, he knows Cameron is still there, and if Devon is gone, too, he knows the bear would only want him to save Cameron. Get up, Archero. All your friends need you.
本当だよ。
Eventually, he slowly sits up, his paws shaking so badly, he's worried he's having
こん
another
な
seizure,
状態
but
で
eventually, he steadies himself. He needs to keep
いけるの
moving.
か。
So, with a deep, shuddering breath,
助
Archero
けを呼び
starts
に
to
行こうとして
carefully
んの
get
か
up,
な？
and that's when he sees it.
アーチェロが。 あ、なんかいるわ。
It stares, and Archero just stares
Yabai,
back
yabai.
silently. In that
Yabai.
moment, he's sure that he actually did die, that what he assumed was a seizure was really just the end. And now this thing, this embodiment of death, is here to take him. Instead of moving toward him though, or really acknowledging him in any way, it doesn't move at all. Archero notices something out of the corner of his eye, and though it's distant, he sees lights. Headlights. Multiple headlights moving in both directions on the landscape. The highway.
なんか犬みたいなのがいる。
Archero looks back, but it's gone. With nothing else to do, he starts to get up. He's sure that he didn't see those lights before he collapsed, but a lot of memory is missing. Several patches between when he was shot and now are unaccounted for. And what he saw was probably just a product of his failing brain. So, wordlessly, he walks in his wide stance with his arms swinging awkwardly, knowing that nothing will be the same again. After telling Brian everything he can remember, the mayor seems satisfied. Brian, did you try and talk to M? Cameron,
話しちゃったんだ。
no, I didn't have time. Brian waves away the coyote's excuse. Brian, just do it next time. I won't interrupt you. Cameron wants to tell the mayor that he's not even sure he can talk to them. Because after all this time, he's starting to think that he shouldn't even be able to. He can see what's happened in the past, maybe even see what might happen in the future, but that's it. He only sees a record, but if they acknowledge him, communicate with him, then that's something that he doesn't want anything to do with. Devon had said that he doesn't believe in demons, but that's what Cameron thinks they are. All of these unexplainable forces that haunt and torment the living. It's all demons. Brian disappears again, and because he doesn't grab the coyote, Cameron assumes he isn't meant to follow him.